Hello and welcome to a session of the Digital Constitutionalism Network together with the Internet Rights and Principles Dynamic Coalition. We're very happy that you're here. So some people interested and also joining, come by, take a seat. Today we'll be presenting and launching the second version of the Digital Constitutionalism Network database of digital bills of rights. And we'll be talking a little bit about its background, its functionality. We'll give you a walkthrough and we have some time for questions later on. So first I will give you a background and tell a little bit about the things that we do have in store for the future. And I hand over to my colleague, Marielle Weiermans from Maastricht University to talk a little bit about the database that is underlying the data set that's underlying the database. And then further going on to my colleague, Kiho Oshima from the University of Bremen, who will walk you through the database so that you can make use of it. And we'll have time for questions. So first of all, the question is, I guess, what are these digital bills of rights that we have collected? We have collected over 300 of these documents. They are not, and I had a conversation yesterday with someone who asked, are these all constitutions? Are these all amendments to constitutions like in the American case? They're not, in fact. Many of these are not binding documents. Many of these are produced by civil society stakeholders and companies who, however, have something in common. That is, they have a language, a rhetoric of constitutionalism, and they also entail rights and principles for the digital age. So that's what they have in common. And they can be directed, not just at public stakeholders, that is public power holder stakes, but also companies. And they are authored by various kinds of stakeholders, many of which actually also here in the room. So many of these digital bills of rights have a history of being created at an internet governance forum or similar event. Examples for these documents, and you'll see it on the slide, come from all over the place. And as you see in this list, they're quite diverse in terms of their bindingness, for example. The African Declaration of Internet Rights and Freedom, for example, is an example of a civil society-led initiative. Marco Civil in Brazil, many of you will know that, is a document that entails a comprehensive list of rights and principles for the internet, and there are many more. Many of those also today focus on AI. So what is the point of this database? We created a database because we wanted to bring all these documents into one place where they can be accessible to everyone, where they can be compared, where people can research them, where people can indeed use them for all of their purposes. So with people who we work with who use that for teaching and training and their own research. So it became also a good tool if you are interested in writing a list of principles for your organization or your event or for the world, that you have a look into these existing documents. The coding worked in a quite comprehensive way, in a hand-coded way. So you see a lot of people here on the list who contributed to the data collection and the data coding. This happened over 3 or 4 years. And what we coded for are substantive principles, 58 of those. And examples include freedom of expression, network neutrality, also multi-stakeholder governance. This has been funded by many people in the way, so I just have this slide up here. Because it's a long-term project, particularly to note maybe the Center for Advanced Internet Studies here in Bochum, which gave funding for the website, and the EU project REMIT. In the future, we plan to extend this. So the current database runs only until 2 years ago, so we have more documents to be coded. And we are also experimenting in a current project with LLM coding and how this can enhance, can support human coders, but also what kind of LLMs are how good in doing that kind of qualitative coding work by way of benchmarking. And we also plan to work with other partners who have other uses for this database for their own particular purposes. And I'm handing over to Marielle.
Excellent. So I will talk you through some of the more specifics of what actually is in this data set and what you will be able to work with in the database. So indeed, as was already mentioned, this is over 300 bills of digital rights, or 321. And they range for over 30 years. So the oldest one that we have in the collection is 1992, all the way up to 2023. And of course, we know that these keep on being developed. So if you would expand it in future projects, then of course the database can be expanded further. the interesting first thing that we're able to do with this data set is then to see the developments over time, so the frequency, how many of these bills are produced every year. And what you see here in the bottom is the total, but above it's split up, because we noticed that in the most recent years, a lot of the production actually is related to AI. So even though there is indeed peaks, a lot of that peak actually is related to AI and continuous thinking about how to marriage AI with human rights protection. What we find particularly important about the data set is that it gives you insight into the diverse actors that are behind these declarations that use this format to try and shape global thinking about rights. So here you can see who has been proposing it, so who are the developers and signatories. Where we see quite a large chunk of it is intergovernmental, so things like United Nations. But also, this is a format that civil society uses very actively. So you see a very large number of civil society actors here. But also in green, those are multi-stakeholder. So where multiple kinds of actors have come together to form a declaration. Another thing that you're able to see just on the basis of the database as a whole is also the global distribution. So Europe features very heavily within this collection, also global, so these international organizations. But at the same time, we of course also see that some regions are underrepresented, which can be for various reasons. And you see here also the different kind of actors. So for example, in the stack for Europe, you see the civil society represented in blue, very active, but also governments in this dark red. So that also is different for the different regions. So what the reason why we developed such a thing, so why we've invested so much effort, is that it is a unique tool for both research and teaching, and we've already been using it. So if you were able to join the GigaNet conference here as well on Monday, you've seen our presentation with some first research using this entire database, trying to see clusters, so which kinds of actors have been promoting which principles. We would be happy to share those results with you. But we've also been using it in teaching in the context of the digital constitutionalist blended intensive programs, of which the most recent one was in Salerno, that you see the picture here on the slide. And we very much invite you to also think about how you might apply it into your work. So now I'll hand it over to my colleague.
Yep.
There you go.
Thank you. So now, so far, maybe you are interested in using it already. So I will give you a little bit of walkthrough of how this dataset works. So when you go to, if you go to digitalconstitutionalism.org database, you see the first page as this. So it's really simple, it's really user-friendly. I'm not saying because I'm from the organization, but I find it really genuinely really simple. So there's keyword search bar, there's code book, there's also advanced search. So let's say that you have already in mind specific keyword or topics that you're interested in, but you're not sure what kind of documents are available. Then you can go to the advanced search, and you can see all these types of filtering that you can apply. And there's, for example, proponent type or proponent location, whether it is from Europe or Asia, like you can choose there. There are more varieties than that, but yeah. And also, if you go to topics, you can see the all 58 types of rights that we include for coding. So you can go there and then look what types of topics you're interested in specifically. And for example, if you're interested in human rights, and also maybe if you're interested in proponent type of multi-stakeholder, you can choose there. And you see a result something like this. It's really simple. On the left side, you can see the title and the released year, and you can go to details. And there you can not only see the released year or titles or URL directly led to the link, but also all types of the topics that included there, and also exactly where it is located inside the document. So it's really useful if you're specifically maybe interested in already human rights, but also, for example, freedom of disinformation or something like that. You can have a nice engagement there, and it's also, I forgot to mention that there's also a point that available language. So if you're interested in looking at the documents not only in English but also in other language, for example, for this document, it includes Nepali, English, and Spanish, and so on. So if you would like to compare some kind of documents in different language, that's also really useful. Yeah, so if you go to the document by the URL there, directly leads you to the page like this. And yeah, that's really it. So it's quite simple. If you have any feedback or comments, we will really appreciate it. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So this is unfortunately we couldn't get anyone who used the database on the stage, because they're all very busy doing their own sessions at the moment. But we did get a testimonial from IT for Change, who'll be using, and you see this on the screen, who are currently using this for their own institutes, their teaching institutes, and that's not an academic research or academic teaching, but indeed more civil society-driven one. I think there are some things that we have to say in terms of the limitations. This data set is not until 2025, we said this earlier. We also, in terms of the languages, the fact that we, most of us researched these documents, collected them mostly in English, and some other European languages, meant that we might have missed some documents. I mean, that's certainly something that we want to look into in the future. So if you have any documents that you know of that are not in the database, do check it out and let us know so we can put them on a list and can include them in the next instance of the data set. But now we actually want to turn it to you. If you have any questions, comments, ideas of how you can get involved, let us know. Yes. Oh, yeah. It is?
Yeah, thanks a lot for the presentation. Great resource, I think. I was wondering if in the future, what you also see is that terms of service and platforms conditions also include, to a degree, and increasingly so, constitutional language, such as users will have the right to use our services for such and such. Do you intend to see those as sort of documents of digital constitutionalism in the future, and will you then include them in the database as well?
Right.
Oh, it's an interesting question. Because of course I think that these terms of service, they're somewhere in between. It is where also a lot of national legislation gets translated into terms of service. So it's quite a particular type of document, where perhaps it is slightly different, that they do not try to create rights, while the documents that we have, many of them in the database, they're trying to fight for the establishment or trying to create certain formulations or combinations of principles. So they, of course, have a slightly different purpose. But still, I would like to, if you don't know of it yet, actually at the University of Bremen, there is another project that keeps track of these. So perhaps we might have at some point a very good interaction between the two different initiatives, where one is really focused on these terms of services and also tracking the changes over time, and then ours, which looks at these other kinds of documents.
Yeah, thank you for plugging that. Indeed, the Platform Governance Archive, .org, do check it out as well. It's a super interesting question, because we get this a lot and think a lot about all these submissions to the WSIS +20 process, the GDC, and different ways in which different stakeholders indeed spell out the rights and principles they think are important for a digital age. So the question is how to integrate those kind of documents, because they are massive in terms of the number they are. And that's really one thing that we could at least consider if we have a more efficient, more scalable way of coding those documents. So that is certainly one thing we have in mind when looking at the use of LLMs, or at least the collaboration between humans and LLMs and the coding process. Great question. Do you have any other questions? In the back.
Thank you. Thank you for this interesting presentation. I was wondering if maybe do you have like local partners, or how do you validate some of the documents that are in the database? For instance, I don't know, sometimes some documents might be or not binding, or some documents might not be really approved. That's something that, for instance, happens in Peru. Like there are a lot of Bill of Rights published in our governmental platform, but they are only drafts, only that's not specified. So I would like to know how was this process of gathering the information and having this validation of the nature of these documents.
I think one thing that's important that we do is when we input these documents into the database and when we code, we have different codes for the years in which they were initially published, the years in which we coded them, so that you can go back and you can say, well, this was a bill in 2011, it was passed in 2013, so you can at least go to the database and know they coded the 2011 version, so that you know that you can be sure. So that's very important in doing that kind of validation work. But absolutely, I think the updating is another thing, right? Because documents that are more recent, they will most likely have a development in them, in the sense that they might be passed or they might be indeed also rescinded. I mean, thinking about US AI regulation and so on, there could be these kind of things going on, and elsewhere too. So I think that's a great point. We do have we don't really currently have like local partners in that sense. So this is a research project that is mostly within the Digital Constitutionalism Network. The network is quite global in its reach. We do have members in most continents, but we don't have local teams in that sense. So this is also one way in which working with civil society groups or other researchers around the world would be quite useful. Anyone really who wants to contribute. So I'll reach out about that. Thanks. Other questions or comments? There are no other questions? Okay, so thank you so much for coming to this launch. Check out the website. And there's one more question. Sorry. So we have 3 minutes left, so you please go ahead.
Apart from tracking the text, do you try to track impact?
We do not, no. So what kind of impact do you mean? Like how do you...
Good question. Lots of different ways to measure that, but the question that I always have in looking at these things is, so what? Like, why do they matter? Who has used them? Have they been cited, like, I don't know, by a court, or have they influenced legislation? I mean, maybe one thing that would be really interesting would be a tool, maybe this is something that AI could help with, that might track whether these ideas have been implemented in legislation or regulation or terms of service. You could imagine showing that they matter by tracing the genealogy of ideas from these, or between these.
Absolutely, thank you. No, absolutely, it's a great question and great suggestion as well. And at the same time, I think everyone here is aware that these are very complicated processes, where especially the impact of civil society actors is very difficult to really determine. But one thing that the database does allow you to do is to try and trace back when were certain ideas, when did they first become prominent? So who were involved, who were the first to use this kind of document to say, this needs to become a principle, this needs to have this kind of global recognition. So you are able to do that. But if you would want to look at the actual impact, then you would have to indeed take on board these other kinds of documents as well, just like the WSIS that was earlier mentioned, and to try and triangulate all of those, which also means that you then have to focus on smaller chunks of time, since you would not be able to do that for the entire 30 years, so that would be quite complicated. Indeed, where we move far beyond our human coders to be able to do that kind of research. But I would absolutely think that maybe this is a first step, where we're able to see what are really the key moments in time where things changed, and who were involved in those changes, and to then build new research projects around those.
And I think maybe let me add that there's two ways. You can either do a qualitative case study way, so that you look at one document and its impact in other ways. But using the database, you can potentially indeed do text correlations and how do certain principles sound compared, whether that actually helps you to do the kind of results in terms of impact, or find out the results in terms of impact is questionable. I mean, I do have students who work on stuff, and they look at like the GDC and what kind of documents might have impacted the GDC, and by doing that just in a language correlation is not necessarily giving you the answer, because many of you have been involved in the GDC process and know it's not just about all these documents submitted. earlier. But I think the database is available to everyone, and so researchers can use it for all kinds of applications. Thank you, and I think now our time is up. Thank you so much for all these questions and the engagement. Have a great conference, and see you around.
Okay.